Today we're going to learn a beginner to intermediate version of Nothing Else Matters. We'll go through the chords used throughout the song so that we're familiar and comfortable with playing them, and then move into how the song is played. Now the first thing you want to do before you start playing guitar is to be sure that your guitar is in tune. Today's song is played in standard tuning, and another good thing to remember is to cut your fingernails nice and short before you start playing. And what this will do is this will make it easier for you to press down onto the strings, and then you can avoid any unnecessary muting or buzzing of the strings. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to number our fingers so that when I describe to you which finger to use where and where to place them on the neck to form each chord, you'll know exactly what I mean. Finger number 1 is going to be our index finger, finger number 2 is our middle finger, finger number 3 is your ring finger, and finger number 4 is your pinky. Now let's move into the chords used throughout the song. Alright, now the reason I classified this song as a beginner to intermediate is because it has quite a few different types of chords in there, so as a beginner it might be a little bit difficult to remember them all. The actual playing of the song is quite simple and quite slow. It's not very fast. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into each one of the chords and we're going to learn each one of them individually, and then we'll move into the first part of the song. Now the first chord we're going to learn is the E minor.
The next chord, E minor, is only using 2 fingers. Whichever 2 fingers is most comfortable for you is what you should use.
So the E minor, we're going to use fingers number 1 and 2. We're always going to use fingers number 1 and 2 for the E minor during this song. And I'll explain that why later. So finger number 1 and 2, we're going to place onto the A string on the 2nd fret with our finger number 1. Finger number 2 is going to go right below it onto the D string on the 2nd fret as well. And then we're going to play all 6 strings. And there's our E minor. The next chord we're going to learn is the E minor 7.
The E minor 7 chord is similar to the E minor chord, except it uses 4 fingers.
Now the reason we're using fingers number 1 and 2 for our E minor is because we're going to leave them right there for our E minor 7. Now our E minor 7, fingers number 3 and 4 are going to come into play here. Finger number 3 is going to go onto the 3rd fret of our B string, and then finger number 4 is going to go right below it onto the 3rd fret of the high E string. And like I said, meanwhile, fingers number 1 and 2 are going to stay put where they were for the E minor onto the 2nd fret of the A string and the 2nd fret of the D string. Now if we strum all 6 strings, it should sound like so. Okay, the next one we're going to learn is a D chord.
The next chord, D, uses only 3 fingers.
Alright, the D chord is going to use fingers number 1, 2, and 3. Finger number 1 will be placed onto the 2nd fret of our G string. Finger number 2 is going to come down here onto the high E string on the 2nd fret. And then finger number 3 is going to come down here onto the 3rd fret of our B string, which is the string in between the G and the high E. And then we're going to strum the bottom 5 or 4 strings. I put my thumb up here to kind of stop this one from getting hit. Okay? Next one we're going to learn is a C Adenine.
C Adenine uses the same structure as a G major chord and also uses all 4 fingers.
Alright, our C Adenine is in a basic G chord shape, and it's going to be played like so, where finger number 1 is placed onto the 2nd fret of the D string. Finger number 2 is going to be placed onto the 3rd fret of our A string. And then finger number 3 and 4 are going to be placed down here onto the 3rd fret of our B and our high E string, just like we did for the E minor 7. And it should sound like this. The next one we're going to learn is the G chord.
The next chord is a G major, or what I like to call a 4-finger G, where all 4 fingers are used.
Now because this song doesn't actually use a regular G chord, he uses a 4-finger G. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave our 2 fingers down here where they were for the C Adenine onto the 3rd fret of the B and the 3rd fret of the high E string. And where our fingers were here for the C Adenine, we're going to move them up. Okay, to the 2nd fret of the A string and the 3rd fret of our big E string. So our 4-finger G should sound like this. The next one we're going to learn is a regular C.
The next chord is a C chord. The C chord uses 3 fingers.
So our regular C uses fingers number 1, 2, and 3. Finger number 1 will be placed onto the first fret of the B string. Finger number 2 is going to come down here onto the second fret of our D string. And then finger number 3 is going to come down here onto the third fret of our A string. Our C chord should sound like this. Now again, I'm putting my thumb up there just so I don't get... We don't want that E string in there because it'll make it sound a little bit of a lower chord. You can play it with it, but it'll sound a little cleaner without it. The next one we're going to learn is the A chord.
The A chord uses 3 fingers as seen in the photo.
Alright, so my preference to play the A chord is to use fingers number 2, 3, and 4. Now if you have your own preference, you can use that as well. I'll teach it the way I like to play it. So finger number 2 is going to be used onto the second fret of our D string. And then we're going to stack fingers number 3 and 4 right below them. Fingers number 3 is going to go onto the second fret of our G string. And then finger number 4 is going to go onto the second fret of our B string. And then if you put them all there together, we should get our A chord like this. Okay? The next one we're going to learn is actually an A minor.
The next chord we'll learn is an A minor, which also uses 3 fingers.
Okay, so the A minor chord is played almost identical to that A chord that we just learned, except we're going to use fingers number 1, 2, and 3. And then finger number 4 is going to be left out this time. So fingers number 2 and 3 will be in the exact same position they were for the A, which is on the second fret of our D and second fret of our G. And then our finger number 1 is going to replace finger number 4 this time, but it's going to be up here on the first fret of the B string. Okay, so it should look like this, and should sound like so. And the next and last chord we're going to learn is a little bit more difficult, and this is called a B minor 7.
The B minor 7 chord is a variation of the original B minor chord, but it is not a bar chord.
Alright, now this B minor 7 isn't played very often, only about a handful of times throughout the song, and it's not part of the regular progressions except at the very end. Now the way we're going to play it, the way I've structured where we put our fingers to play each chord, it's easiest to play this if we use fingers number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so what we're going to do, finger number 1 is going to be placed onto the second fret of the A string. Finger number 2 is going to be placed down here onto the second fret of our G string. And then finger number 3 is going to be placed down here onto the second fret of our E string, our high E string. Okay, now if we put them all down, it should look like this, and it should sound like so. Okay, now we'll get into where all these chords come in throughout the song right after this. Alright, so let's get started on the chords that are played during the melodic intro which he plays, which is a little bit more of a high, intermediate, and advanced video for sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn the chords that are played over the top of that. So the first chord that we're going to use is going to be an E minor. Now, he dwells on the E minor for quite a long time, and you'd have to listen to the song to get an idea of when he switches to the next chord, which is the A minor. So what I'll do is I will kind of skip how long he waits to go to the A minor, so you can get an idea of what chords you're going to need to play during this intro. And later in the song, there's a melodic part right before the solo that he actually plays this exact same chord progression. So it's going to start with an E minor, and then he goes to an A minor, and then he's going to go to a C, and then to a D, and then back to the E minor. Okay, so again that's E minor, A minor, C. So remember, when we're in this A minor form, to go to the C, you only have to lift finger number 3. Finger number 1 and 2 stay where they are, and we bring finger number 3 down here and put it onto the third fret of our A string. And then moving into the D, and then returning to the first chord, which is also the last chord, the E minor. Now I'll play this through once in regular time, and then we're going to go back and we're going to play it through nice and slow together, and then right after that we'll get into the verse, which is identical throughout the entire song. So here we are in regular time. Okay, pretty simple. Now let's move in. We'll play this nice and slow together. On the count of 3, E minor, A minor, regular C, D, and then we finish off on the E minor. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. The A minor. Now to the C. Now to the D. Now back to the E minor. Let's play through one more time. Stay on the E. We're going to switch to the A minor. Now to the C. Now to the D. And finally back to the E minor. And we're done. Okay, so if you play that for an intro, now you can kind of listen for the timings if you want to play along to the actual intro, or if you'd like to just have an intro for yourself to play through the song. It's a little quicker to do it just the way we did it. Okay, now let's move into the verse. Alright, so now that we got that intro down, that intro is going to come back again a little later on, and I'm going to tell you when, but for now we're going to do the verse. Now the verse is going to incorporate our E minor 7, our D chord, and we're going to put our little our number 4 finger down there, because from there we're going to move into a C add 9, and then we're going to keep our fingers down here on our B and E, and we're going to go back to the E minor 7, okay, then to the D, and a C add 9 again, then we're going to come one more time, back to the E minor 7, back to the D, back to the C add 9. Now we're going to move into the G4 finger, and then finally our B minor 7, and then back to an E minor. Okay, now don't panic. I'm going to play through all that in regular time, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do it nice and slow together. Okay, so in regular time, it should sound like this. Okay, I know that's a lot to take in. That's why I said that this is more of a beginner to intermediate song, because there's a lot of different chords in there and there's a lot of different changes. But the overall difficulty is not that high, okay? Now let's do that together. Now what we'll do is there are 3 different lines, okay? So there's 2 times where he ends on a C add 9, and he goes back to his E minor 7, and then on the 3rd time he goes from the C add 9 to a G, and then to our B minor 7. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the first 2 first, so that we get that down, because they're identical, and then we're going to move into the 3rd one, which incorporates the G and our B minor 7. Okay, so here we go. On the count of 3, E minor 7, D, C add 9. And and then repeat. We're going to do that 2 times. So, nice and slow on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, E minor 7. D, C add 9, and repeat. E minor 7, to the D, to the C add 9. Okay, that's the first 2 lines. Pretty simple. Let's practice it. Now this third part, where he incorporates the G and the E minor 7, we're going to do right now. Okay, so moving forward to this third part, again, the starting is going to be the same. It's going to be our E minor 7, same D chord, same C add 9, but then from the C add 9, instead of going back to our E minor 7, we're going to come up here to our G. And now switching from our G to the B minor 7, this is where you're going to have to practice a little bit, but a trick that I want you to know is that finger number 1 is already in position for our B minor 7, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to lift finger number 2, 3, and 4, finger number 1 stays down. Then all we have to do is put finger number 2 down right here onto our G string, and then finger number 3 down onto our high E string. Play it like so. And then from there, again, our finger number 1 is in place for our next chord, which is the E minor. So then finger number 3 and 2 come up, and then put finger number 2 back down to form our E minor chord. Okay? Now I'll play through this 1 time, nice and slow, so you can understand it, and then we're going to play it together. So it'll sound like this. Now to the D, C add 9, now to the G, now the B minor 7, and then to the E minor. Okay? Let's play that a little bit slower and together on the count of 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, E minor 7. To the D, to the C add 9, to the G, now to our B minor 7, now to the E minor to finish it off. Okay? Now just so you're not lost, I'm going to play through all 3 lines at regular speed, and then I'm going to tune it down just a little bit so that you can see the changes, okay? So here we go. Line number 1, E minor 7. To the D, to the C add 9, back to the E minor 7. This is number 2. To the D, to the C add 9. E minor 7, this is number 3. To the D, to the C add 9. We're going to move into the G. G, B minor 7, then to the E minor to finish it off. That is every verse, every single verse. Now rewind, practice that. Now we're going to move into the chorus. Alright, so from the chorus, once we finish on this E minor, which is the last chord of the verse, we're going to jump right into the chorus, which starts on a C, a regular C chord. Okay? And then into an A, and then he dwells on the D. Okay, now I'm going to play through 2 lines of the chorus so you understand what it sounds like, and then we're going to go in nice and slow. We're going to play it together. Okay? So I'm going to start from the last chord of the verse, which is the E minor, so you can see how the transition goes from the verse to the chorus. Okay? Here we go. C, A, D. Here we go, back to the C, A, and it all ends up back on the E. E minor, sorry. Okay? So let's play through this. We'll start at the C this time. We'll go nice and slow from the C. C, A, D. Now remember, there's only one strum on the C and the A, and then he goes right to the D and stays on that. And then one strum on the C, one strum on the A, stay on the D, back to the E minor. He only plays it twice, okay? So here we go, nice and slow on the C. 1, 2, 3, to the A, to the D, to the C, to the A, back to the D. C, A, D, finish off on the E minor. Okay? Perfect. Alright, now I'm going to play through that one more time. Again, I'm going to end on the last chord of the verse so you can see exactly how we get into it. As a matter of fact, so that it's even simpler, I'm going to play the last line of the verse so you see the transition perfectly. Okay, so here we go from the E minor 7, last line of the verse in regular time, and I'll tone it down just a little bit so you can see. Here we go. To the C, and the A, on the D, to the C, and the D, and then back to the E minor to finish it off. Okay? Perfect, guys. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now, the next part I'm going to teach you is going to be the part where he plays a little bit of a solo, a clean solo before the big solo. And basically, this part is going to be exactly what we learned in the intro. We're going to learn that now. Okay, so with this little melodic part, what we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to play our E minor, then our A minor, then back to our C. Remember, this is identical to the intro. D, and then to our E minor again, okay? Now don't forget, this is exactly like the intro, so if you forget, just rewind, but I'm going to play through it right now in regular time so you can hear what it sounds like. Here we go. Play through it again. Stay on the E minor, the A minor, now to a C, and to the D, and back to the E minor. Alright, now that's that whole part. And then he goes right back into another verse with our E minor 7. Now, if you'd like, you have to listen to the song because there's quite a lot of changes and the song is quite long. We actually go in from the intro to a verse, and then he plays 2 more verses back to back, and then finally he plays a chorus, and then a verse, a chorus, then the intro part which we just learned, and then he does 2 more verses, a chorus. As I said, this is a very long song. Finally, after that chorus, he ends off on an E, which brings him into the big heavy solo where it gets distorted with the guitars and everything. And then finally there's 1 more verse, and then that's it. He plays that E minor chord, and then the whole song just fades out, okay? But up to now, we've learned every part of this song, guys. Now rewind, watch it again, do a little practicing, and like I said, there's a lot of chords, but this is a very simple song to play. So I hope you guys have a good time, and I hope you learned. Great. Hey guys, awesome job learning Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you, don't forget to check out the rest of our videos here on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. Thanks again for watching, guys. Good luck.